My name is Jacob Walda. I'm an associate evangelist with Bill Prankard at the Bill Prankard Evangelistic Association. And we've been partners with KCM for decades, like probably 30 or 40 years. I grew up in a really poor family. My parents weren't raised with a lot of financial insight. So we were that family at Christmas time that was like those Christmas tree families. We were the ones, like one year, I remember for a week, all we had was spaghetti and pasta sauce. We didn't have meat or veggies, and because that's all we could afford. That was all the food bank gave us. And I just remember as a child being like, my family's never gonna go through this again. And I got really tight with money and just had no real understanding of godly principles. I just understood the world's wisdom on what saving was and all these different things. And then started reading the Bible and came across, these different messages like in Acts where it talks about the generosity of the early church and how they gave so ridiculously, it seemed to me, that they were selling their properties that they owned to support the needs of one another. And it began to challenge my own heart, like even looking at, the woman who gave 2 pennies, where Jesus was like, this woman has more faith than I have seen in all of Israel. And it was like the sacrifice that she gave just to serve the Lord. And so it was stories like that began to really shift some of the questions that I had around generosity. I talked to my wife about this, and we figure there was a year we just kept giving. Like every opportunity we had was a yes. Every time someone was like they had a need, we were saying yes to it. And we probably gave like upwards of 40% or more of our income in a year. And we didn't make a lot of money, right? Like we weren't making 6 figures to be able to give that kind of money. I was a youth pastoring and my wife was just working part-time. Even though we had jobs, even though like we were doing all the right things, but like it got to the point we had to pray in our rent money. Pastor Terry gave us some great advice. We were sharing this story with her and she said, Jacob, you guys need to understand there's a difference between seed money and bread money. And I was like, when I first understood generosity, I was like, everything is seed money. Like, I'm just going to give it all and the Lord will take care of us. And he did. And so we, just kept praying and saying, okay, Lord, there's principles in the kingdom with finances. We were doing a lot of sowing and not a lot of reaping. A few months later, when we were looking for a house, like, because we had to move, like, what do we want? And what were the specifics so that we knew that we could give God all the glory because we'd asked very specifically. We ended up getting this place and we were renting it. It's on this little island in this town, and there's 3 little houses that the landlord owned. And so we were renting there, it was great. And after a period of time, we talked to him, he's in his late 80s, and we said, would you ever look at doing a rent to own, or, could we ever buy it from you, like our house? And he's like, oh yeah. And we're like, really? And he's like, yes. And so we asked him, and the price was ridiculous. Like, it was just so cheap. We're like, are you sure you understand the market? Like, we were just confused by it, and we were like, no, like it's way too cheap. And he's like, I know what I want, and I want to help you guys. Everywhere I go, and every financial person you see online or on the news, they keep saying our generation's never going to own a home. Our generation, like, they'll be in their 50s or later by the time they're able to actually afford a down payment. And it's just like all this negative news. But my wife and I just like see this as a blessing, but also as an example of the testimony of what our generation can do when we actually follow the principles of God, because we're not bound up to what the world says. We're actually just bound up in total freedom to whatever God has for us. Being a partner, for the last a number of years now that I've been involved with the ministry, we've been encouraged, not just in our finances, but in every area, to be prosperous and to just believe God that he is actually the God of the impossible, not just in seeing people saved and healed, but in the reality of what we experience here in this world. So it's a joy and a privilege that we get to partner with KCM.